Welcome everyone to the WWDA LEAD Empowering Women with Disability in the Digital Age presentation for the NGO CSW67. First, I want to acknowledge country. An acknowledgement of country is a really important part of our practice at Women with Disabilities Australia. It acknowledges and pays respect to the traditional owners and custodians of the lands in which we work on. So to start with, I'll acknowledge that I live, work and play on the land of the unceded lands of the Muwinina people in Nipaluna, Lutruwita. I pay respects to the ancestors and elders past and present of this country and all the countries we may joining from today across Australia and the world. So I want to start with a statement and a quote that even though the title of this presentation is WWDA LEAD Empowering Women with Disability in the Digital Age, that women, girls and non-binary people with disabilities are already So welcome. And well, hello everyone, and welcome to the WWDA LEAD Empowering Women with Disability in the Digital Age presentation. So women with disabilities are already powerful. At Women with Disabilities Australia, we believe that women with disabilities already have the ability to lead. However, it is an access issue that is the barrier, and it's not women with disabilities and their capabilities. Today we cover empowering women, girls, feminine identifying, non-binary people with disabilities in the digital age, and facilitate a question and answer session to openly discuss leadership, capacity building and exchange, co-design processes, accessibility and technology. We have a short break after the presentation and before the Q&A. This presentation will cover overview and background of WWDA and the WWDA LEAD project, working in meaningful non-tokenistic co-design online through committees and groups, inclusivity, problem solving, and providing accessibility online. We're here to talk about. So we'll also talk to defining and challenging transformation and transforming traditional views of leadership. And we'll also talk about individual capacity building and exchange through committees, activities, programs, and events. So my name is Saphia Grant, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm here today to talk about the WWDA LEAD project specifically and how through the COVID-19 pandemic, we have empowered women, girls, and non-binary people with disabilities through technology and online delivery. Firstly, I would like to again acknowledge and pay respects to the First Nations people on the lands on which I'm streaming in virtually today to host this presentation. I live in Nipaluna, known as Hobart, in Muwinina country, which is, I think for people who don't know, is the little island south of the Australian mainland known as Lutruwita, Tasmania. Recognising that living on unceded lands means that not only do I recognise that the First people not only do I recognise that the First Nations that the First Nations people of this country did not sign away their lands or rights, but the atrocities and the injustices that occurred during and resulting from colonisation and the implications of stolen country on countless atrocities that were committed are ongoing. I recognise that the impact that this has had continues to have an effect on Women with Disabilities Australia's First Nations, disabled women, girls and non-binary members, and that our journeys towards equity and inclusion are linked. I invite you all to recognise and reflect on the lands and country that you're joining in on today, and feel free to name them in the chat functions or introduce yourself and mention the lands and people's country that you're calling in from today in the discussion and the Q&A session following following the sorry, I'm just lost my spot. I'm watching the Q&A while I'm doing this. So I'm just going to pause for a second and ask Jacinta to contact Heidi if possible from Disabilities. It seems like we've got some technical problems. So, yep. So in the discussion following this, I acknowledge and really want to invite people to think about the lands and reflect on what countries you're calling in on and the history, and to share that in the chat if you want to in the discussion post this presentation. So before I go any further, I'd like to give a visual description of what I look like and my backdrop from any blind or low vision people that are attending today. I'll also give visual descriptions moving forward of the slides and as we move forward through the presentation. So my name is Saf. I have white skin, and I have, at the moment, I have very pale purple hair. I have blue eyes. I'm wearing a blue beret, a blue top, and I have with pink flowers in them, and my backdrop is an office with a bookshelf in the background and a piece of art on the wall next to a door. So expectations. So just some general housekeeping. One, this is the first time I'm an event running on Zoom's events, so I've got some support here. The support I have here today is one of our members from WWDA who will be in and out because they have family. And then I also have Heidi LaPaglia, who will be, when we sorted out technical difficulties, we'll hopefully be able to help people with chat functions and Q&As. And if you do have any problems with any technical problems, and thank you for being patient with us while we are trialing this Zoom events platform, which is very new to us, it would be very wonderful if you could stick around for the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So next housekeeping is that we don't expect people to have their cameras on during these sessions. People can have them on and off depending on whatever capacity they have. People can use chat only if they want to interact. We have live captioners. So live captioning should be enabled. And the reason why we use live captioners, and thank you for our live captioners for attending. The reason why we use live captioners is because the automated captions sometimes don't capture the sometimes the live captioners close. I can't understand. I'm getting some chat through, and I do not have the ability to be able to, on the Zoom events, to be able to enable chat function for those who are there. But if someone from WWDA can and our support team can enable chat, that would be great. Otherwise, feel free to use the Q&A box. That is an option. And thanks for your patience with us while we're working out these technical issues in housekeeping, which we will come to as well, because we might as well talk about that now. So technical problems. If there are technical problems during this presentation, we will aim to try and resolve them as quickly as possible. And we are recording the webinar. So if people do want to come in and out of the webinar and the presentation, please feel free to do so. If you need to take a break, we will be recording it. So if you miss anything, you can come back and watch it later. I will be moving quite quickly through the presentation and then open up the floor for questions at the end for the Q&A and discussion. I will be leaning heavily on my support team to let me know how we can facilitate that on this platform. And if I need to join again from a different link. So if someone can send me a different link in which I can join this as another person to problem solve, which we'll go into later about how great women with disabilities are at problem solving. So that's that. Sign interpreters. We did have international sign language booked. So if they are here, that is great. Please feel free to choose that and focus on that screen. That would be great. And I'm assuming you can all see that. The other things, is we've got the hashtags at the bottom of these slides. So if you want to use hashtags at any time, we've provided them for you down the bottom. So NGO CSW67 or hashtag WWDA LEAD. And also, Heidi Lapalia, who's joined us, you will be moderating. And we'll be doing her best and coming in and out to be able to answer questions that are available and moderate the chat. So that brings me to another point. One of the things when we're talking about housekeeping and introducing these sessions is that with women with disabilities and empowering women with disabilities in the digital age using these platforms, which can be quite tricky and can be quite inaccessible at times and complicated, is that we have the capacity not only of our members, but also of our team, which are majority of women with disabilities, to then be able to, turn up with the best intentions to do the most good and the least harm in the capacity we have. So that's probably our final thing, besides mentioning that we are recording this and will be available after the presentation at some point. So a little bit more about me. My name is Saphia Grant. My pronouns are they, them. I work as the project manager on the WWDA LEAD project for Women with Disabilities Australia. And I am a proud, queer, non-binary person with disabilities. Most of the time they're invisible. And most recently, I got diagnosed with endometriosis, which is my latest, and that's a shared experience that I know a lot of women with disabilities have after 10 years of being, it was in my head. So that's my latest, and I'm currently recovering from surgery. So I'm very happy to be here and very, very grateful for the community and support that we have as women and non-binary people with disabilities to engage with each other and community and have that support. So quickly, I'm going to run through this next slide, or the slide I've had up because it's quite wordy, which is the terms and phrases that we'll be using during this presentation. So we recognise that many people today that are here will be familiar with these terms, and these will be used in context of the purpose of this presentation. So there may be different definitions and some people may have different understandings. So I'm just going to run through them because our community is quite broad as a disabled community. So some people may be familiar with some terms, some people may not. but if you are, that is great. So with Women with Disabilities Australia, so this slide is a really pale purple background. In black text, it says terms and phrases. It's got the WWDA LEAD logo in the top right corner. It's got an illustration done by Eiley Banks in the right hand of two women with disabilities, one holding a microphone up to the other so that they can speak. This is, it's got 6 icons with 6 different terms. The first icon is, I'll go to now, which is a purple round icon with the logo for Women with Disabilities Australia in it. And next to it is black text that says WWDA with Disabilities Australia. So that's the acronym. So when I say WWDA, it's WWDA, but at Women with Disabilities Australia, we pronounce it WWDA. So that is what I say during the presentation. If you hear me say WWDA or WWDA LEAD, the WWDA or WWDA stands for Women with Disabilities Australia. Women, girls, feminine identifying, non-binary people with disabilities. This is the second icon, which has 2 people with long hair smiling, one with the arm around the other. So next to that is in black text is women, girls, feminine identifying and non-binary people with disabilities. So at Women with Disabilities Australia or WWDA, when we say this, we mean what we mean when we say women and girls with disability. What we mean is it's an umbrella. We use it as an umbrella, even though it's not. But we use it as an umbrella. We also are talking to, and we are including women, girls, feminine identifying and non-binary people with disability. Women we generally use as a term, particularly again for the Women with Disability Australia context, for our members that are over 15. Girls for people in the community who are under 15. To be aware of with Women with Disabilities member, you do have to be 15 and over. So feminine identifying, this is a term that refers to a gender identity or expression that describes someone with a gender that it leans towards feminine. Some feminine identifying people also identify as women, while others don't. And non-binary is an umbrella term for someone who does not identify as exclusively a man or a woman, identifies outside the gender binary, or someone who is non-binary that may feel like a mix of genders, or it's not having a gender at all. So it's a non-binary is another umbrella term to describe people who are outside women that are also may experience adjacent forms of oppression to do with their gender and their gender identity. So individual capacity building. So individual capacity building, this term is used by our projects with the aim of creating connections between women and disability and the communities we live in. It's used with the aim to build knowledge, skills, and the confidence of people with disability and improve their access to community and mainstream services. And through peer support, mentoring, developing resources, and other skills development, strengthening, and building programs and activities. So individual capacity building is something that is one of the main deliverables for the WWDA LEAD project through our funders, which I'll get to later. And while the intention of the individual capacity building, this is something that comes a lot in our community, and something that I asked in a poll, which you may have access if you're accessing this event through the Hoover app. There's a poll in there where you can kind of answer some questions or talk about, like, tick options on what topics you're most interested in to discuss. So this term, while the intention was to move away from deficit models and we recognize that some women with disabilities, with the individual capacity building and the way that's phrased, we recognize that some women with disabilities already have that skills, and they already have the skills and the ability and experience, but they're looking for opportunities to use these skills. So they're not necessarily looking to build their capacity. They have capacity. They're looking for, and they have the ability, but they're looking for the opportunity and access. So this is kind of like access and opportunity over ability and power. So capacity exchange. So capacity exchange came out of that conversation, and this is a term that you may be recognizing from the international disability and women with disability space, where capacity exchange acknowledges that power dynamic. It acknowledges that power over where capacity building is very focused on service providers building the capacity of women with disabilities and women non-binary people with disabilities. But capacity exchange is a term that's gaining popularity. And unlike capacity building, it does recognize that women with disability and have capacity and capability, and it looks at kind of developing projects and activities and planning that encourages that two-way power with social and human rights model of disability. And it creates access and opportunity in spaces for women with disability to use, hone and strengthen skills and build those networks that not only improves confidence, it also has benefits for the community and mainstream services in recognizing and validating the leadership knowledge and power that women with disability already have. So you'll remember that slide at the start, which I won't go back to, which acknowledges that women with disability are already powerful. Again, it's access, it's not an opportunity. So co-design, it brings me to co-design. And so with this icon, I've noticed that go backwards for the visual component. For the individual capacity building, there was an icon there, had a person in the middle with arrows pointing around. Capacity exchange had another purple icon circle, and it has two little round circles with arrows to each other, and next to it is black text that says capacity exchange. And now we're onto the icon, which is again purple circle with a megaphone and some speech bubbles and a play icon, and next to it black text is the word co-design. So co-design goes further than consultation. It is participatory, capacity focused, and it's a power sharing approach based on building relationships and trust with people with lived experience who are the audience and or will be using the product, the program, the resource through the full process from planning to development to learning and evaluation. So I could talk more about co-design. I could talk all day about co-design, but today I'm going to focus, because of the poll that we did in the Hoover app, people were really interested in talking about leadership, and that was the one with the most responses. So we do have another presentation from Women with Disabilities Australia on our site webinar, and I'll share that at the end of this presentation. So with that one, there will be talking more about co-design and building a website in co-design. So I highly recommend people who want to talk about co-design more to attend that event. So next we'll go to leadership. So leadership, we've got a round purple icon with 3 people in it. And they look like they're wearing uniforms, which is an interesting point, because the idea of leadership, and this is where I'm going to leave a question for everyone who's here and viewing, and for people who at this part of the presentation. I know it's very early to already make you do work, but so what I want to do is kind of talk this kind of idea of traditional leadership. So leadership is a contested term. Traditionally, it has been used to describe people who lead others at work in a position where they have authority to use the power over model of leadership, and in using that power to be able to influence others. So that's kind of this very traditional view of leadership. But through co-design, the WWDA LEAD project has developed and produced a resource that we will talk about later, which is the WWDA LEAD leadership statement, to discuss how leadership is defined through the lens of women with disability. But when we talk about, we'll talk more about leadership throughout this whole presentation and afterwards, but I would like to ask people here right now to think about how you define leadership, and how you would define and how would you describe leadership to people if you were asked that question. So hold on to these thoughts, and if you feel comfortable, feel free to share in the question and answer, or after the discussion or the presentation, or if you just can't get it out of your head and you want to use the chat function, you can just put it in the chat function, write it down, hold it there. But yeah, just think about it early in this presentation about how would you define leadership if someone asked you, how do you define leadership? So Just to provide a little bit of background on Women with Disabilities Australia, some of you will be aware of our background, but I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a story. So the beginning of Women with Disabilities Australia dates back to the International Year of Disabled People's, Year of the Disabled Person in 1981, when Disabled People's International, DPI acronym, held its first World Assembly in Singapore. After participating in this assembly, 13 Australians returned to Australia to set up an Australian branch of a DPI, a Disabled Persons International. 2 years later, DPI Australia, DPIA, was from the outset was dominated by disabled men. Only 3 out of the 11 members of its governance structure were women, and there was no mention of women or gender in the DPIA goals and objectives. Key women members of the DPIA were frustrated and disappointed at their unequal participation with the DPIA. So in 1985, they decided to establish their own women's network within the DPIA, known as the National Women's Network, DPIA. In the same year, DPIA held its second World Assembly in the Bahamas. Australian women with disability representing DPIA were required to pay their own way to the assembly, while male representations of the DPIA were funded to attend the assembly. So as a protest to this, Australian women joined forces with their international colleagues and demanded that women be given the right to participate equally in all national organisations of people with disability. The DPI World Council was forced to hold an emergency meeting at which they agreed to establish a standing committee on the affairs of women with disability. In seeking a vehicle to effectively advocate on their own behalf, the network passed a motion in 1991 resolving the development to develop their own organisation along with feminist principles to get independent funding and leave DPIA. It took a further 3 years to secure a small seeding grant from the Australian government, but in 1994, the network changed its name to Women with Disabilities Australia, WWDA, and established a governance structure. In 1995, WWDA was incorporated as an independent organisation run by and for women with disability. So since this time, WWDA has developed a critical mass of expertise on the needs of women with disability. It has concentrated and utilised the energies of women with disabilities, activists, researchers and service providers, and engaged other organisations of individuals keen to advance the rights and the needs of women with disability. The organisation has grown and matured considerably in the past decade and has moved away from being a small group of women with disability concerned primarily with building individual confidence and self-esteem to an international human rights organisation enabling and representing deeply committed to the promoting and advancing women with disabilities human rights. WWDA has now got a strong and growing international presence, and we have 2 representatives at CSW in person this year, and is seen as a leading voice in international disability and human rights debates. WWDA's innovative programs have been critically acclaimed at national and international levels, and the organisation has been rewarded with a number of prestigious awards, including National State Violence Prevention and Human Rights Awards. So that's a bit of our story, and I'm very proud to be a part of this story for the last 2 years. It's an incredible organisation. So that's where we've been. Where we're going is we continue to be a peak national disabled organisation for women, girls and non-binary people with disability from all types of disability around Australia. It's grounded in the human rights framework and links gender and disability to with the key purpose to promote, protect and advance the human rights of women and girls with disability in Australia. We represent over 2 million disabled women, girls and non-binary people with disability. And as a disabled persons organisation, WWDA is managed and funded by people with disability for women, girls and non-binary people with disability. We continue to operate internationally as a recognised leader in promoting the human rights, agency, autonomy and freedoms of women and girls with disability, while manifesting this in practice through our communities, programs, committees, co-design resources and events, such as the WWDA LEAD project that we'll be talking about today. So the WWDA LEAD project is just one example of the broader work that WWDA does, but I really wanted to give that story of that beginning story of women with disability because it's so important as the foundation for the work that we do. So this slide that I've been talking to has a blue to purple gradient background. It's got the WWDA LEAD logo in the far right corner. It's got a circle, which is pale purple with the purple Women with Disabilities Australia. logo, and it's got an illustration of two women with disability in the center, one with brown skin and a pink dress and pink shoes, and the other one is with a prosthetic limb, and the other one has a blue dress and it was in a chair. This next slide, we'll talk to the WWDA LEAD project, has the same purple gradient. It's got another illustration in the middle, which has a woman wearing a pink top and a pink headscarf with a purple skirt, and next to another person on a stool next to them, and they have standing has crutches. The person sitting down on a stool has a blue top and a pink skirt, and we have a logo next to them, which is a large circle with the WWDA LEAD logo, which is the circle with also the logo of Women with Disabilities Australia in it. There is black text that says the WWDA LEAD project and purple text below it that says the story so far, and then we have the hashtags for NGO CSW67 and the hashtags WWDA LEAD at the bottom, which are at the bottom, I think, of all slides except for one. Oh, skip ahead to us. So the WWDA LEAD projects, I've been working on as project manager now for 2 years, and it's been an incredible project for empowering women with disabilities using online and digital and technology. So WWDA LEAD actually stands for L. It's an acronym as well as a word. So the L stands for, because we love acronyms in the disability and the gender sector. So the L stands for lead, the E stands for engage, the A stands for activate, and the D stands for drive. And this project is DSS by ILC, which is individual and linkages project funding. So yeah, so with this, just going to take a break to drink some water. If anyone else needs a break at any time, please feel free to do so. So the WWDA LEAD project has been focused on promoting and advancing the leadership, autonomy, agency and human rights and freedoms of women, girls and feminine identifying and non-binary people with disabilities, both individually and collectively. But a little bit about our story and where we've come from. Slides. Just giving a signposting what the next slide is going to say. Here we go. So a little bit of the story. So when the original grant application for WWDA, I'm going to have to speed up my speaking. Sorry, captioners, live captioners and sign. I'm trying to speak slow for the captioning and the signers, but we are going to run out of time. So I do need to pick up the speed a bit. I apologize ahead for the captioners and anyone here that may struggle with that. Again, the recording will be available afterwards. So the WWDA LEAD project, the original grant application for the WWDA LEAD project was submitted and accepted for the ILC funding. Little did we know that months later, our entire world would change due to COVID-19 pandemic. This change challenged the WWDA LEAD team and the project steering committee to adjust our project plan and empower WWDA members by using the best technology available to us at the time, with the capacity we had to use it at the time, and we have learned a lot. Even as we continue to organise our activities now, we recognise and hear that the pandemic is still forcing many women and girls with disability to remain isolated. For some women and girls with disability, the pandemic has actually increased optimism and hope for an inclusive and equitable society, as those with access and technology literacy have found that adjustments to mainstream workplaces, events and activities made quickly in response to the pandemic were suddenly accessible and inclusive that weren't before, and that it just motivated our community to suddenly make things accessible very suddenly, because the majority of the community would benefit from it, which could have been done at any time to benefit the disabled community and women with disabilities. So this was a positive thing for many of our members, and we've had a lot of feedback for. However, there is also a fear on the back of this, that these advances and adjustments made during the pandemic so that people could access things from home may, and that they created so many opportunities for participation and involvement that weren't there before, that these opportunities and these advancements will just disappear as society goes back to more in-person activities. And I'm not sure how this is happening in other areas of the world, but definitely within the local community here and at a local, state and national level, we are seeing that more events, particularly in the arts, are returning to that in person and are not using the live stream functions and the accessibility that they were using during the height of the pandemic. So for others, though, it highlighted the digital divide and isolated people who do and have not had access to technology, internet, and the skills, knowledge, and support needed to use them. So these people may not have had access or the literacy for online space and events. And so therefore, the people that don't have that access to technology and online literacy and digital literacy, the online spaces, events, and activities have not been accessible due to some and not all disabilities being provided adjustments and requirements for full equitable participation and involvement. Either way, we've learned through this challenging time that the need for human connection, equity, transformative leadership, and that major structural reform and paradigm shifts need to occur before women and girls with disability feel truly empowered and comfortable to meet online and or in person. And that we can't create this change in silos, and we can't create this change on our own. We need greater intersecting support from each other in different communities to be able for these reforms and paradigm shifts to create equity for women with disabilities. So for us, it means we need the women's community and the women's sector to include the lens of women with disabilities, and we need the disability sector to include the lens of women, and not be siloed into talking about disability and women. We need those voices and that recognised. And I could go into disaggregated data and how important that is, but this is not the context, so let's talk about that later. So we will need to keep meeting, and this is a continue with WWDA LEAD project. We need to keep meeting and working together with allies, mainstream organisations and funders to create the change that we envision. And talking to the WWDA LEAD vision, we created in co-design the WWDA leadership statement, which we'll talk about in a minute. And with that, the vision that we came up with in co-design with our project steering committee is that is about seeing things as they will be, a world which values the leadership of women and girls and non-binary people with disabilities in all our diversity. If meeting and connecting was important before, it has become even more essential during this global pandemic to identify, respond, reform, and transform the ableist, sexist, economic, societal, and political challenges that women and girls and non-binary people face. The following slides discuss how we've engaged, problem solved, and responded to constructive feedback. Meeting in meaningful non-tokenistic co-design with our committees, actively modelling and working in co-design to identify, develop, implement, and evaluate activities, programs, and resources, and showing what they look like. And then also involved in capacity building and exchange through activities, programs, and co-designing resources. So again, it's again focusing on the ability of our members, and looking at that language. We come across the language quite a bit of where people say they want the outcomes, they want women and girls to have the ability to be able to engage in community and mainstream services, where we really, with women with disabilities, what we're hearing a lot for this LEAD project is that people don't want to be, they want autonomy and agency, and they don't want to be coached to come out and be able to communicate, be able to participate in society, because we already do and we already are. It's more about the fact that we don't always have the access and the opportunity, and that's what we're focusing on a lot. So participating equitably in society rather than being treated with that medical model where we're the problem. We're looking at that societal model and really building on the social model and the human rights model of disability through the WWDA LEAD program to empower through advocating for equity through participation in society, and we talk a lot with our funders about how we use language to focus on the ability, but focusing on the access and opportunities. So the barriers are out there rather than with us. So I guess that's another thing to reflect on and take away is how language can sometimes, how to use language in the context of empowering women with disabilities, specifically when we're talking online and writing content and resources and sharing it through digital platforms. So language is how we frame the conversations that we have with women and girls with disability. And it's a huge part of the transformative work that women with disabilities through the LEAD project is doing. So next slide. This is a very busy one. So the image description for this one's going to be fun. So bear with me. It's a pale purple background. It's got the title across the top is in black, and it says establishing and running committees. So with this one, I'm just going to give a very quick overview of some of the key parts about, because this is the heart of the WWDA LEAD project, is our co-design committees and the project steering committee. So really, with this, we're working in meaningful co-design and non-tokenistic. So really working in this through this participation model. So participating in this through the strategic processes and practice using very strategic processes and practice to engage, empower, and be inclusive and as accessible as possible within our capacity to do so in the digital environment. So on the left-hand side of this slide, there's an orange circle with from Ali Banks again, who has done a lot of illustrations for WWDA LEAD and runs that whole theme of Ali's artwork runs through the WWDA LEAD project. If you go to our website, you'll be able to find the WWDA LEAD project page on the website, and we will share that link with you. And you'll see a lot of these illustrations, but this one has an image of two people sitting down who do not have visible disabilities, but they may. One is a man with brown skin in a blue suit, and the other one is a woman with brown skin with a purpley pink blazer and a blue top. Very similar color to mine. And they're both looking up at a woman with grey hair and kind of like pale brown skin with kind of suit on with a blazer and pants set, who's sitting in a wheelchair with a person standing next to her, kind of behind her, who has silver hair and a brown skin, and they both have speaker little microphones, and the person standing behind has a walking stick, and the image depicts this power structure of the people sitting down, people with disabilities, and the women with disabilities are speaking to the people who are sitting down rather than people who are engaging in consultation sometimes stand up while we're sitting down. This is about us, and this image depicts that. So this was done in 4 these illustrations were done, and they coincide with the WWDA leadership statement principles, which you will see in the next slide, I think. So these icons, again, we've got these little purple icons on this slide. The first one has a picture of a person with long hair and glasses with a laptop inside a purple circle, and next to it says recruiting. So through the recruiting process, we create and design co-design committee expression of interests forms in multiple formats: accessible PDF, Word documents, and easy read or easy English. Easy English and easy read are a writing style that helps people who find it hard to read and understand English. It is simpler than plain English, and it has a lower reading level. So Easy English is also called, so sometimes there's two different versions, Easy English and Easy Read. They're different, but you'll recognize the style because it uses short sentences with an image or a picture. So meeting accessibility needs, step one with this when we're establishing running committees is asking, what do you have accessibility? And this is something that we ask for our registrations, for our events, for a lot of things, and we'll talk about that more later. But asking is a really good first step. If you have a first step, try and go back a step and see if there's a question you should have asked before that question for accessibility. So with our meeting accessibility needs, we do use Zoom. And with Zoom, we do have some accessibility that I talked about today in the housekeeping, very similar. We do ask again in the Zoom, for Zoom, we ask what are your accessibility and support needs to be able to participate equitably in this setting using Zoom. So we have supported quite a few members who were not confident with Zoom and online platforms and that weren't actually, and we've supported them through. And what we've seen through the project is people who were not confident at the start with using Zoom, by supporting and providing accessibility and opportunity to learn and grow and walking them through that. We've then seen people who at this, a year, 2 years ago, very difficult found it difficult to sign up, needed to be talked through the process of calling in, setting it up, very, a lot of support, to now 2 years later, having and zooming in to live events and webinars and speaking using Zoom to a webinar confidently and very successfully, which has been really amazing, being able to see that progression, that once people have the opportunity and access and support, that it becomes a medium that then they can then use in the community, and they're further their self-advocacy, individual advocacy and systemic advocacy, or work or employment, or even attending events and webinars. So communications, so again, using Zoom, captions, having Auslan, and then also sending out and supporting information, which I'll talk about now. So again, communication, step one, ask. So this is the response that we use at Women with Disabilities through our online delivery. So generally, asking again, what are your needs and what are your access needs and supports? And this may mean writing emails, agendas, minutes, and other documents in 16-point Arial for low vision participants, using Easy English Read, or making sure that we write things in short sentences and simple English. So it's very responsive. Our communications are very responsive, and we may use with our committee members phone calls, we may use email. In some circumstances, we've even used posts to be able to communicate with our members. So we also use, there's also many opportunities and many options, and so many online deliveries now with Google Meets, Teams, Zoom, I think many. So the next one to talk to is roles, responsibilities and expectations of our committees. So different committees for the WWDA projects and groups have different purposes. For example, the Summit Co-Design Committee is specifically focused on the scope of planning, delivering an national online leadership summit, while the project steering committee and the youth advisory groups are at times expected to advise, guide and support the project. They're also, even though the project steering committee and the youth advisory groups have this large role in guiding and supporting the entire project, and other committees such as the Summit Co-Design Committee may be specifically focused on a small co-design aspect or a large co-design aspect, the project steering committee has still been involved in co-design and advisory groups. So the project steering committee was involved in co-designing the WWDA leadership statement and the 5 principles, and also involved in co-designing the pre-planning stage for the toolkit co-design committee. So they developed and co-designed the structure that and the scope that then we created a toolkit co-design committee for. So it's that kind of process and that strategic process of bringing together people's expertise and working with people to create products, resources, and events that our community will actually use and benefit from. So creating opportunities for our committees as well. So one of the other things, creating opportunities, one thing is we remunerate. We don't have any volunteers. We remunerate everybody. So everyone who participates in our committees gets paid for their time, because women and girls with disability need to be paid for their time. So that is something that is really important to us at Women with Disabilities Australia and on the LEAD project, is that we do remunerate women with disabilities and do recognise and value their lived experience and everything they bring to the table. So, and then through this, we've had, I'll talk further to the opportunities and the, as we talk to the activities quickly. And first, we'll go to the next slide, which is again is another pale purple to gradient blue background. And this one at the top is this black heading that says WWDA LEAD's leadership statement. So this one again has the vision, which we talked to before, which was seeing things as they will be, a world which values the leadership of women and girls with disability and all our diversity. And it has the 5 icons across the bottom that correlate with each of the 5 WWDA LEAD principles, leadership principles. So we're running very low on time. So thank you for being with me in this story of the WWDA LEAD project and how we've empowered women with disabilities in the digital age. We can talk much further after this, after a short break, and we'll talk to the content. So the WWDA LEAD leadership statement, which we will provide a link for moving forward. So this one was developed in co-design, and it was launched on International Women's Day last year by Ms. Payne, who was the Minister for Women at the time. So we also had a webinar with members of the Project Steering Committee who helped create this in co-design, and those members spoke on the webinar. So that was an opportunity that we created for our members to be able to speak on the webinar about the co-design project and putting this resource together, which is looking at redefining and looking at how do we define leadership through the lens of women and girls with disability. So there's a whole lot of background I could give you on how women with disability have reported to us the leadership. So we do have, yeah, I could give so much background. Again, this could be a whole hour presentation just talking to the WWDA leadership statement and the process of co-design and what it means and in practice. But right now we don't have time. So I'll just go into, again, just quickly give you an overview of the WWDA LEAD's 5 leadership principles. So the first one is lead by lifting up, and there's an illustration there. And so this one, through the lens of women with disabilities, leading by lifting up was the first one. And it was the first principle. And what this one means is leadership that creates space for others to join, feel, and be heard too. The second one is value diversity and lived experience. And this one is about promoting the status of women and girls with disability in all our diversity. And we are a very diverse group with very intersecting identities, with some people more impacted by other experiences of marginalization than others. It's a very diverse group and so much lived experience that you cannot go to university for and learn. You can only get it through lived experience, and that knowledge is so valuable and so important in so much work, from advocacy to policy to legislation to design to, yeah. So this particular leadership principle talks to that. and pretty much to have full accessibility, inclusivity in all areas of our public, private, educational, political, economic, social life, and that this must be a standard and not an optional addition, which we usually are. So we shouldn't have to fight for our rights to occupy spaces and positions, which we often do. So this is about that and challenging that. So next one is challenging, transforming traditional views of leadership, which I think would be really great to discuss moving forward in the Q&A session. So this one focuses very strongly on what I've touched on a couple of times, which is women with disabilities are not problems to be fixed. We are problem solvers. And we see this a lot. We spend so much of our lives problem solving how we get through day to day, that this is so valuable and such a strong part of our leadership that just shines through in every area of our lives. And so the next principle is care for self to care for community. So this one was very important. It really focused on the fact that the relationships that we have with ourselves and each other and others in our lives are the most important resources that we have, and that to be able to care for our community, we first need to make sure that we are working from within our capacity, and that it's okay for us to take rest, and that when we rest, other people can step up, and that we can share, and that we share leadership. And then the last one is very well known to the community: nothing about us without us. So this was the final leadership principle, because it just work with leadership and for women, disabled women leadership. This one is very, very important. However, it has evolved, and I want to acknowledge that it's no longer just nothing about us without us. And a lot of people have just crossed out the about us in the middle and just nothing without us, which is highly appropriate. When we revise this leadership statement, we may look to change that, because there should, every area of life, whether it be political, social, economic, benefits from universal design, and that to do that, we need women with disability at every single table having our voices heard. So this is about inclusion and not segregation. So this is in all areas of life that affect this is pretty much in all areas that affect our lives and our daily lives. So in preparation for this statement, we worked in meaningful co-design with the project steering committee. So I want to really recognise them and the work that they did to put this together. So currently we have some bit of a update, some things we are planning and some things we're doing, is the National Online Leadership Summit and Leadership Toolkit. So these have been two specific co-design committees that have gone through the planning stage and are now currently in the development and the implementation stage. So we've had two different committees working specifically in co-design on these two activities. So activities, I'm going to go through these very quickly, but we've had a webinar series, and these were developed in co-design with members of and featured with members of the project steering committee. We and the Widow Youth Advisory Group and other women and non-binary people with disabilities from our community. With the image, it's a light purple background again. The leadership statement launch image is there, and there's another kind of screenshot of the webinars that you can see on YouTube or on our website. And with these screenshots, I really wanted to add them, because the screenshots in the webinars, the way that we did them to make them accessible online was that we had a panel for the slides, like the ones I'm showing now, but we also had another panel, another box on the same view. You could do it all in one view, or you could have separate view. You could click on each box to view each thing. So the images of the screenshots of the webinars are like rectangles, and it has a large slide, and then there's two different boxes on the right. The top box has another kind of background, pale blue to purple again background, and the box on the top right has the image of the person speaking. Like at the moment, with probably me. At the moment, you've got the little Zoom square, and then you've got the person speaking, and then next to them you've got a little square for the webinar where the Auslan interpreter, the sign language interpreter, sat in as well. And then below you had another square, a large square, where you could read the live captions in real time. So peer networking, we host monthly peer networking sessions. This is an informal, autonomous space run by women for women with disability. And it's been very, very, very popular. We've had some very good feedback regarding this activity. And there's a little question there to self-reflect. Think you do not need to share your thoughts, but just a question for those who may not have thought about it. Why do you think autonomous spaces run by women with disability, for women with disability, may be important? We find that the peer networking sessions have been run on via Zoom with live. We have had it with captions, we've had it with sign, we've had it without sign. We ask people their accessibility, and what we find with this is a really good first step for people when they first join WWDA, or they've been a member for WWDA for a while, but they haven't been involved in our day-to-day operations and organisations or activities, and they turn up and they be involved with peer networking, and they meet the staff, they meet each other, and then what we find is then members of the community who use the peer networking as generally a gateway to WWDA then become interested and apply for our committees, and they learn more about the organisation, and they've been getting more and more involved. So it's having these online autonomous spaces increases the opportunity and the engagement, and also builds the confidence and helps women with disabilities understand that they're not alone. There are other people out there, and we do all do leadership differently, but that doesn't mean that it's not leadership. So the scholarship program, we've had 2 rounds of the scholarship programs, and these were very successful. These gave WWDA members an opportunity to grow our leadership skills, build our capacity as leaders in the community. It's also people who have been involved with the scholarship program have gone on to, one became a staff member, another one became a committee member, and have become more and more involved with the WWDA community. It was a great way to upskill people in whatever course they chose, as long as it was somehow related to leadership or upskilling themselves so they could participate in their leadership in their daily lives. It was fine, and it was up to the participant to choose the course that they wanted to attend in, rather than having courses provided for them. So it gave that agency and autonomy and the freedoms to our members to be able to select a course and then apply for the funding to pay for it. So one member said that being involved in this project, they can confidently say that they now know what's involved and what it takes to make documents more accessible to people with low literacy in our communities, and that they understand that much better what it's like for people with low literacy, and they know the steps to take and what to look for, and they now have the resources so they can confidently say they understand people much better. So they studied easy English and how to write easy English. So it's given our members that increased confidence, skills and opportunities to self-advocate for themselves and be leaders in individual and systemic advocacy. Again, that's a purple slide, and it has a little tile with 2 women with disabilities with academic hats on, very symbolic of learning, I guess. And then there's a link saying, look it up, read more here. And it's got a link to the WWDA LEAD scholarships, which are on our website. The mentoring program. So the mentoring program is still running. It's running now, and it's a very interesting one, which I will talk about for a little bit. I'm very mindful that I've gone over. So if anyone does need to take a break and come back, please do. Yes, please do. If you need to take a break, this is being recorded, so I do understand that listening to someone talk for this long can be quite exhausting. So I hope that, if you need a break, you can take it and come back and know this is recorded and you can watch back later. So the mentoring program is, I think for me, the program has been really interesting in hearing the feedback from people who participated. It's run twice, and this is one of the more interesting parts of online mentoring, using an external provider and that mainstream external provider for the access for women and girls with disability to use what's typically a provider and a very traditional form of leadership and skill development, and doing that mainstream capacity building and exchange with them to improve and upgrade their programs. So Brancher was the organisation that we have worked with to develop these mentoring programs. So the Brancher program already had the accessibility, the website accessibility standards of the WCAG 2.0 AA. I'm pretty sure through this conference we'll probably hear that a lot, talking about that kind of accessibility. But what we found working with WWDA was the accessibility that isn't structured in that kind of website development. This is going to make your, these are the standards, formal standards. What we found was like the informal parts that Brancher hadn't thought about that may make their website and their platform not accessible or not fully accessible, or give the experience that felt welcoming to women and girls with disability. So in 2021, we worked with them to roll out a structured mentoring program with disability with Brancher, which is a science-based mentoring program. And they've really have been a true partner to us, working in collaboration with them to design an industry-leading mentoring program for women with disability. And since then, other organisations that provide support for women with disability mentoring have started using this platform. So overall, the platform we ran together in 2021 was a success. We had over 140 people who expressed interest for the program and 37 pairs that we ended up accepting. We had a very, I think we had 35 originally, and we expanded it to 37 so that we could include all the pairs that were matched together with the very science-based algorithm that the program used to match people together. So all participants were provided with access to the Brancher platform, which pushed bite-sized kind of training program with little nudges via email to complete mentoring activities and track program goals. Even though the project was, the Brancher platform was accessible for the feedback and and they received positive feedback and satisfaction ratings from the mentees and the mentors, they did find that that there was some feedback around the training not being visible. So 78% they would actually recommend the bite-sized online training. 71% said that they were satisfied, very satisfied. These are the only stats I'm going to give, apologies. So 71% they were satisfied or very satisfied with the person they were paired with. 57 agreed or strongly agreed that they will provide adequate training, support and resources to get the most out of the program. 100% of the mentors enjoyed paying it forward. 85% said that they wanted to do the project again the next year. So this created, like, as you can see, that 57% agreed or strongly agreed that provided adequate training and support. So the challenge for our 2022-23 program that we're running at the moment was that we wanted to further respond to that feedback, level up and elevate the program, and take on that constructive feedback that we received from the previous program and improve the training. So while it was accessible, it wasn't purpose-built for women with disability, and it didn't have pictures that people identified with, and etc. And there was no easy English training available. So with Brancher, we worked really closely and collaboratively with Brancher to building and capacity exchange for the mentoring program through 3 key steps. One was conscious and intentional language. Again, mentoring is a 2-way relationship, and it's not one way. Mentees and mentors can learn from each other. So reverse mentoring is likely to occur, and where the less experienced person learn from the more experienced, and the less experienced person may learn from the more. And that peer mentoring can also occur where the mentee and the mentor are collaborating on a single problem together. Also focus on reducing that power imbalance. So while key responsibilities of a mentor and a mentee differ, what we really wanted to focus on was their ability to learn, and the expectation to share openly remains the same both ways. So encouraging both mentees and mentors to be vulnerable, share stories and be open with each other in the context, with, respect and understanding and supporting the agency and the human rights and freedoms of each other. So, for example, Brancher sets up goals to share with the mentee for the program, but it shouldn't just be the mentee that has goals. So they also have a section where the mentors are expected to set their goals and share their goals too. So that is one example of being what they mean when they say that they want people to share and be vulnerable, is to put their goals down. So doing something as goal sharing reduces the power imbalance and makes the mentee realize that their mentor is human and they have developmental needs as well, and that we're all sharing and we're all learning together. So it's that power with power sharing model of leadership. So Easy English Training, they also purpose-built Easy English Training using women. Co-design widow members were paid for their time and paid well for their time. And the training for both mentees and mentors and their key roles and responsibilities, the mentor guide. So the key outcome is that we've had, at this time of writing this, it was 97 members, it's a lot more now, who have signed up for the mentoring program, which is the biggest that we've done so far. So far 80% have participated in training, and 80% of them highly recommend the training to their peers, and we're looking forward to hearing more as this mentoring program wraps up in 6 months' time. So we're constantly learning and constantly using that constructive feedback to improve our programs. So as we move through, we also had an art prize, which you can see and visit the art gallery online, and we had that was launched in 2021, and that was done online, and there's an online gallery through our site website developed by and for women with disability. I'm just going to move through these ones quickly, as I know we have been talking for a while and sharing the space for a while. Leadership blogs. So these were very popular with our audience. These stories of leadership and our members' experience through COVID-19 pandemic remain one of the most successful parts of the project. There's an image here in the middle, which is a purple background, and it has purple text that says, "How is COVID affecting you as a disabled person? We want to hear from you and publish your story on the WWDA blog." It has two people pictures. One has a mask with leaves on it, and the other person has like a full face mask and another mask underneath. So this one was a tile used for our social media, and I wanted to this because I really wanted to show how we put out our communications online through social media to communicate with our members, to be able to, for them to be able to share their stories. So while the blogs have been one of the most popular and successful activities run by the WWDA LEAD project, which started as opportunities to showcase writing skills, and both for people showing and writing about leadership and sharing their story. By COVID-19, we opened up the conversation of blogs to more broadly talk about the impacts that the pandemic was having on our members' lives. These blogs were published on, and they still are, one of our most read pages on our website and shared by our social media platforms to create engagement, connection, and capacity exchange, learning from each other and sharing our stories. The WWDA LEAD blog has been so popular and so successful that it now runs alongside the real stories, which you can read on our story website, and they're WWDA-wide now, and long past the WWDA LEAD project, they've now been incorporated into WWDA-wide blogs where people can submit stories and pictures, and they'll be in existence far past the WWDA LEAD activity project has run its course. So please go to the website and read those stories if you enjoy blogs. I think I saw a chat thing, someone in the chat say that they write in blogs. It's a really great and incredible. I think we've had, off the top of my head, over 60 blogs published since the beginning of the WWDA LEAD project. So I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you so much for sticking with me, those who have been here for the whole last hour or so. Want to say thank you. A presentation is all, for me, it's all about the audience, and we wouldn't have a presentation if we didn't have audience and people watching it. So thank you so much, all of you, for turning up. I want to acknowledge all of the women, girls, and non-binary people with disability who may be watching, and I hope that everybody has had a really great experience. So some of the key points, and there was a lot of content, so they may have been buried. But a lot of the key points that we aim to raise while sharing the WWDA LEAD project and how we've engaged and empowered women with disabilities through the project and through the COVID-19 pandemic. Really wanted to bring the key points into the conversation. We're about empowering women with disability through meaningful, non-tokenistic, accessible co-design, which provides real opportunities and capacity exchange building between people, you know, particularly while being so isolated, and building those connections and those networks. And also another key point was how technology and online methods of meeting can and does empower women and girls with disability. And this was demonstrated above through all of the different activities and committees that we run. So takeaways from this presentation, I think it's really hard for me to give a takeaway for the presentation, because I really hope that different people will take different things away, whether it's the individual capacity building or whether it's capacity exchange, whether it's the 5 leadership principles. I think the most important thing for here is like that people found something useful through this presentation from the WWDA LEAD experience and our experience through driving this project. I hope there's something that today that you all took away with you. If you want to put something in the chat or you want to provide any constructive feedback, please do. I'd really love to hear about what you got and what your takeaways were from today's presentation, because that would really help. If maybe some people found that the mainstream capacity building and our work with external providers who previously didn't have experience with women with disability and how they benefited from that contact and that use. There's a few things that we definitely raised around accessibility and how we communicate with our members online and through digital, and how we do workarounds to look at the digital divide, and how we look at the how we do try to problem solve as much as we can to make sure that we're delivering projects community that are as accessible as we can within our capacity as an organization. So what's next? What's next is our question and answer session. So yes, so what's next for the WWDA LEAD? We're still working in co-design with our committees, and we're still looking to constantly improve and learn as we go on how to better empower and keep empowering, keep doing the things that are working for our members and for the women and girls and non-binary people with disability in Australia. So keep trying to be that peak organisation that aims are to promote the agency autonomy and the freedoms and the human rights of women and girls with disability. So thank you everyone for attending the presentation. I'm just going to have a quick 5-minute break, or maybe 2-minute break. And in this 2 minutes, I'm going to try and figure out how I can get into the screen where we can have the questions and answering. So I don't know if Hardy and Jacinta, you want to provide me a link so I can be in the same room as the people who, oh, thank you for those chats. I can see the chat now. So if someone can send me that so I can be in the same room to be able to, I guess, be on that equal level playing field, to be able to do the question and answer, that would be great. So just want to, again, thank you all again for attending. Thank you to our live captioners. Thank you to our sign language interpreters. Please do attend the other WWDA parallel events. There are 2 other ones that are happening this week. I think put them in the chat in a bit. But otherwise, if you search for them in the Hoover app, for those who are attending the conference and have that, there's one for our site, and there is one which is in person, which is for the in collaboration with the Rural Women's with Disability Australia. So yeah, thank you again, and look forward to talking more, and I'll be back with you in just at 9:22. So 2 minutes. Thank you.